we have our guest with us, B. Pagels-Minor. Please, by all means, let our people know what brings you to the conversation today.
Well, first I have to say I actually just got a shipment notification that my new air purifier is on its way. So this is like our third one, right? Like that's how serious it is out here. I'm up here like Googling like how can my air be pure? Like this is like the little things that make us excited. But I think that just like from a general point, I'm here because of community. Before we actually started recording, I shared the fact that, you know, it's actually happenstance. Well, actually, I shouldn't say happenstance, right? Because nothing that we do is really by chance, right? It's usually by us ordering our steps and getting to the place that we're supposed to be. So actually, when I first moved out here to California, I joined a group called Sister Circle, Black Women in Tech. And Lexi, who was on the podcast, just like yesterday, she and I met because someone said, you have to meet Lexi. Lexi is someone who will change your life. And to be truthful, she has. And also, she's like literally the loveliest. Like, if you, and also, I don't really like hugs, but her hugs give like a whole nother level to hugs. And then I was just like, as I see Lexi, I'm like, you know what? I'm ready. Just give me all of that in one place. But she actually, she connected me to someone named Dominique Collins, and Dominique Collins connected me to someone named Say. And Say actually is the person who connected me with this podcast and said, B, like, I really think you should be here. So I'm here because of community and the fact that, it's a really great opportunity to kind of share some of my thoughts and also kind of promote those other folks who stand behind me and I stand on their shoulders.
That's what's up. The world is small and it is grand at the same time. And I'm glad that you're here with us. We definitely gonna dig deep and see what's up, what's up. But more importantly, given that you've worked with these people or at least have them in your network, right, within your social circles, kind of what is your kind of overall goal? What is it that you're trying to accomplish for yourself? And having worked with these other people, I don't want to make the assumption, but I have a feeling that you also are doing work for others and supporting others. So what does those two ends look like for yourself and then for the people?
Yeah, I think for me it's about lifting up other people. I always tell folks that like my superpower is meeting people, understanding deeply what can make them successful, and then helping supercharge that ability, right? And I think that actually comes from, so I actually, tell folks all the time. So this pandemic and this economic downturn reminds me a little bit of 2008. And so I graduated in 2008. And when I graduated from college, I started off, I had this consulting degree, I had this consulting job. I was getting paid more money than anyone in my family ever had. And then the job went away. And I was a barista at Tivana. And I remember reaching out to people that I thought were really cool, who were super, well respected, and saying, I'm the struggling kid who just wants a job, right? And I would love to talk to you. And so many of those people ignored me, right? Like I never got responses back. And many people just didn't invest in me. And so for me personally, like I spent a lot of my time just, putting myself out there and telling people, like, I'm here for you. Like, I'm here for you to run ideas off of. If you have questions about how to navigate the corporate, workspace, how to navigate tech, how to just navigate life, right? Like, I love talking about that. I love participating in that. And I love helping people kind of like open themselves up. One of the things that I think is like very difficult for both, just generally for minorities as well as women, is that we have this assumption that we may not be good enough. But the reality is that, like, to be truthful, like we speak two languages just coming out of the womb, right? Because we have to speak the language of whatever our culture is, but we also have to speak the language of the dominant culture, which are white folks. And we have to, and so because of that, we are naturally in tune and much more empathetic and have the ability to be more successful in most workplaces than just about anyone. And the only thing that we really need is the encouragement to prove that we can do that. And so that's really what I do. And so I do a lot of work, speaking, appearing on podcasts, writing things, one-on-one mentorship with those young people. Also, some not so young people, because I mean everybody needs advice, and it's really just that's the work of my life. And when it's all said and done, I hope that people will say that B just did a lot to completely change and create this army of magnificent humans who help change the world.
super important, super powerful, and super thankful for you being here with us today. I it's it's incredible to hear all that and to know that, at least at the very least in the smallest parts of the world, we can be a part of the conversation and be able to learn from you. Like, you mentioned some names that have been pivotal in my own life and development and have been critical in how I look at things and how I show up in the workplace. So to hear you mention Lexi, to speak to all these different things and then yourself join us here today is like, thank you so much. Thank you for your time. They don't you hit it on the head in terms of saying speaking two languages, right? Like the level of empathy because of being at a disadvantage, right? Being people of color, being black, being whatever you want to call it, African American, the African diaspora. Um, for me, I know this might rub some people the wrong way, but being American descendants of slaves and what that culture looks like, right? Like we are Americans and we are descendants of slaves, and we have had to take whatever little you've given us, and we've created things that are supremely valuable to society, to the world, and to each other, right? Like we're profound people, and it's seen when you look at a movie like Black Panther, right?
Mhm.
That is, I was having a conversation with somebody and they were being hypercritical about the movie, and they were like, how can so many people identify with T'Challa when he's from Southeast Africa? And I'm like, hold on, back it up. He was like, I could see if he was from West Africa, it'd be a different story. I'm like, hold on.
Yeah.
I'm like, most of us being American descendants of slaves, we don't have a national country of origin that we can identify. In this fictitious country that was created within America, which was to give us some sense of like attachment or belonging, has become our unofficial homeland, right? And now we
Mhm.
see it manifested on the screen, supported through a black lens, especially a dude from the Bay Area, Ryan Coogler, shout out to him. And it's through the scope of trying to reconcile all these different threads of our own personal identities being played out on one of the biggest stages possible. That's the reason why T'Challa is so important, right? That's the reason why it's so important for us to know the power in ourselves and to uplift and hold each other like as like applaud worthy. So that brings me to saying this, like before we continue, I just want to give you all the awards, praise, love, admiration that you deserve, because I know when you walk into work, they're not going to give you a plaque for saying you made it this far, right? Then no one's going to say you are here, right? Because I know for me, when I go into work and I look around and I don't see my friends or people that reflect my community, it's isolating at times. And you need to, like, have those moments where you can find a Lexi to embrace, to say, oh,
Yeah.
we're in this together, we're in this struggle, we're in this, whether we, no matter how far we come, our ability to connect empowers and enriches our lives and gives us that nutritional feed. But more importantly, people who aren't in those conversations or don't get to be a part of those circles, we want to give you that love and support to know that even where we are at, it's an honor to know that you're there doing what you got to do to show up and be yourself, that you're able to see within yourself that yes, from the very beginning, the duality of our identities and how we have to operate in this world is now making us important and showing our worth beyond just the scope of a role and a title, because we're fulfilling things most times that not everyone is able to do, right? And a lot of those people, right, who might be the gatekeepers don't look like us, but when they see, oh, they're actually incredible at what they do, you know what, maybe we should get behind them, right? So
Yeah.
again, thank you. But
Thank you.
And B, I just want to say thank you and give you praise for paying homage for those that came before you, because that shows your strength and your dignity as a Black woman. And I know about code switching or code meshing or whatever you want to call it. And some people may call it out and say, "Oh, you know what? Are you trying to assimilate? Are you trying to remove yourself from or from a certain culture, people group and assimilate to a different kind?" And you know what? I say as many people you can talk to and in as many ways as you can, that's boss. So if you have to, if you know you're gonna communicate the most effectively talking one way with this group of people, and then go over there and still share your same heart, which is what you're doing, all praise. That's nothing but good. But I do want to give a shout out to the late and great Chadwick Boseman,
Mhm.
because he was a real life superhero, and I actually had a chance to meet him in person. And the man was just filled with so much peace, despite what may have been going on within him physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. And physically, here he is leading just this fictitious world, but no, really fictitious country, Wakanda, on the screen. But he was such a leader into and just as a person. To be in his presence was an honor. And I just want to wrap up and say it's also an honor to be co-hosting here with you guys as well. It's kicking off to be a great episode. I hope all of our listeners are really tuning in because it's about to get deep.
Exactly, exactly. So, B, where do you come from? Where did you get? Where did your roots start? Like, where part of the
Yeah.
world are we talking about?
Yeah. Well, actually, so it's so funny that you say that, right? Because actually, and so I want to take a step back because obviously there's like the reality of what I've been since I've been here, right? But there's also this idea of like where have we been? So when we talk about Wakanda and why people are so like inspired by it, it's because most of us, people who are descendants of enslaved people, we don't know the full story. Like I can tell you, for instance, my dad's side of the family, there's a cemetery down in Mississippi where I'm from, that I can show you the various ancestors, and that's the one who was the first one to be freed from slavery, right? But I can't tell you where we were before then, right? And actually, I just took this African ancestry class, like ancestry test, and so now I know from my mom's side of the family, I'm from Cameroon. And so I'm waiting for my dad to do his test because I want to see where he's from too. And it's actually really great because like I didn't even know anything about Cameroon, but I was like, so I'm gonna follow Cameroon soccer. I'm gonna follow Cameroon. I was like, I'm gonna wear all the colors. Like people are not gonna be able to deal with me because I'm at least partially Cameroonian. So like this is who I am now. But I was born in Mississippi, so a very small town in Mississippi, not that far from Memphis, Tennessee. I actually lived in Chicago for a couple of years before we settled back down into Memphis, and I went to I kind of got my once I was in school and things like that. I went to school in Memphis, Tennessee, and so like I'd say very specifically, I'm super Southern, right? Because there's a very big difference between being a Southern Black person and like a Black person from somewhere else, right? There's this like very much like this dynamic of like the way that we kind of hold ourselves and how we kind of act. And I always tell folks like I was like everyone is my friend until you're not, and when you're not, like there's no confusion about what your status is in my life. But like I am from the traditional. Actually, what's one of the most fascinating things about my life is that I remember when I was a child, so like two, three, four, being at my grandma's house, which was like a shack. It was literally a shack, and it was a shack that my great grandfather had built. And so it started off as like a one room shack, and they just kept putting different rooms on it. And like it was like so interesting because you didn't want to be in certain rooms because there was too much of a draft. It would be too cold, right? And so then when I was in high school, my family got together all this money and they built my grandma like a legit house, right? And so that's literally like that's to me is like kind of the when I think about my journey, especially working in tech and doing the types of work I do and the obscene amounts of money I get paid now compared to what I even considered back then, it's just like whoa, like I'm from a family that in Mississippi that thought a shack was like the best place in the world.
I mean, come on. A lot of black people, right? Me and Alex go back and forth about this a lot of times, but we have ties. Our family comes from the South, right? There's a lot of
Hmm.
people. I mean, especially us being on the West Coast, migrated from the Southern states to come out here
Hmm.
for more opportunities, right? For being able to try and lay claim to something that is kind of fertile, right? And so to hear that you come from the South and that you've been able to kind of be in the Midwest and to see different aspects of the South and that culture, like I know firsthand, it is a difference. It is almost like a whole nother country, if you will, because of certain dynamics that are at play. And the history and lineage, right? Like being able to go back and say, I can go and see where, oh, this is the first freed person in my family, right? Like most people, they be like watching PBS and be like living vicariously through Chris Rock when he goes and does his test and be like, oh, but there's a slave in the family. And it's like, most times kids don't even realize that the generations, like I know for my family, it was like, there's my grandma, there's my great grandma, and then there's her mom. She was a slave, right? And then I look back and I'm like, my grandma picked cotton in Texas, like my grandma, right? We don't think about how close these certain elements to life are to us, but to hear like, yeah, you got to see firsthand, like you don't want to be in this room in this shack that is grandma's house, right? Because it's a draft. But then to have the ability to say, okay, now we're at a place where we can give her something that, this is what we want to give to you, right? We want to give you this, and we're capable to. That's powerful in itself. So with that, like you come with that, what made you get into tech? And then within that, like, what do you do specifically within the realm of tech?
Yeah, so actually, so I graduated in 2008. So 2008 was the last great economic downturn. And I went to, Northwestern. So like in Northwestern, there's like a few different careers that you normally take. Like so you end up going to law school or medical school, or you go to become a consultant and go get a business degree. And so I took the go be a consultant and take the business degree. But I honestly was I was at my job for 3 months, and then they lost, like a lot of their contracts, and they were like, "Peace, like, we don't have a space for you." And so I actually started doing a lot of like really random work. My favorite job was honestly being a barista at Teavana because, like, honestly, the tea was hidden. Like that tea was so delicious. Like I'm just gonna put that out there. But
I needed to know that.
one,
I needed to know.
I I
Because
understand. So
because they don't get the love. So I needed to know. They just pop up, and then you either know somebody that worked there or don't. And then like, how do I navigate? Do I go get tea off the Safeway shelf, or do I just hit up Tivana? I need that real information. I need
yeah,
the real scoop.
definitely get a Teavana. Like I said, it's Starbucks. The Starbucks makes the Teavana like drinks. It's really good. Like I fully approve of them. So one thing but what was really great about that is that I started doing like various like job fairs and stuff like that. And so I actually became a store manager at Target. And so it's a little convoluted story, but it makes sense when it all comes together. But I became a store manager at Target, interestingly enough, I still had to make tea because there was a Starbucks in the Target, and so I managed a part of the store that included the Starbucks. I had to learn how to make coffee and tea. So like I stepped up my skill level. But it was actually through that job that I realized I absolutely freaking hate it doing that work. And Target actually had a really great program where they would pay for your grad school. Like so they would pay for a percentage of it. And so because of that, I ended up going to grad school and I did a dual program, so a Master of Information Systems and MBA. And through that program, I actually got introduced to the CEO of a startup in Chicago called Sharacell, and I became like an entry level tech support person, right? And so that job is actually the job that introduced me to product management. And so I actually work as a product manager. So product managers, I think the simplest way to think about a product manager is any device you have. So let's say an iPhone. There's someone who thinks about whether there should be icons or not, like whether there should be Touch ID or Face ID. And so product managers are the people who are behind those decisions. Like they do a lot of analysis, whether it's user experience surveys, they talk to customers and they make those decisions. And so that's what my actual work is. And so I've been a product manager for about 8 years now.
Okay, that's what's up. That's what's up. So, is it safe to say where you work?
So I currently work at but yeah, it's really interesting. But before that, like, I worked at Apple, I worked at Sprout Social, I've worked at a lot of different tech companies. I will say that this is the first time I really, really like where I work, so that's why I'm very comfortable in saying it. In fact, we're recruiting for a lot of roles right now. So if you're looking, feel free to take a look.
I guess I need to start looking. Look, June.
June came back right on time. She heard the opportunity and then you see where she at now, sipping your tea. So to me, it's important, like, that people enjoy where they are, right? Because everyone is dealing with, different levels of kind of I call 2020 the Great Awakening, right? Like we are coming to
Mhm.
terms with like how to provoke and push the culture forward in all these different spaces because we're whole people, right? Like, yeah, I wear a mask because I realize I'm in a world where it's easy to commodify what I do, right? I make music, I enjoy making music, but I create the separation and boundary because I want to be more part of a community. I don't want to deal with fame, right? So when the mask is on, the mask is for sale. When the mask is off, I'm not for sale, right? And so there's that relationship that we have where it's like, tech and tech companies a lot of times are seen as like the evil overlords of like you're coming in to take away, but in reality, when you look deeper at it, right, we're going through a transformation of industry, right? Like the biggest kind of supplier of movies doesn't have copies, physical media, like it's an online service, right? Just like one of the biggest kind of, I want to say, housing opportunists or opportunities that you can get, they don't own property. Airbnb doesn't own property. They provide a service that gives you access to housing, right? Same goes for Uber and Lyft. This is the industrial revolution we're witnessing, right? It's not about the physical, it's about how do we create these services and deliver on a grand scale, on a bigger scale, right? Now, when you say it like that, it doesn't sound like these demonic entities have come to take over and destroy the industry. Well, let's be fair. We always go through an evolution. We go through moving into the new design of what will be, and then we part ways with the old. It's hard to transition, it's hard to change, but it's important to know that you love what you do and that there are opportunities for people to be able to be a part of it, right? Because it's not going away. Like, I'm one of the few people in the world who still holds on to physical media, right? Like that is not the norm, right? What's the norm is I could look at a whole season of TV on my phone. You could do what? I remember a Nokia. I remember a two-way was the most
Yeah.
incredible technology I knew about. Like now we could make whole movies off the phone and then redistribute them back onto the phone for other people to use on their phones.
Well, actually,
But
the bigger point is, remember when you had to watch the show the night that it came on, or else it never came on again? It was a
what
big
if
deal.
what if it's a show that only had like one or two seasons? Then it's never going into syndication, so you never gonna catch a rerun. Like it
Hmm.
was like you had to be there, or like like I'm a kid. I there's a show called Botsmaster. Tell me who, what, Botsmaster? Like that ain't
For
part of the lexicon of popular television. Power Rangers and freaking like
for
Sailor
me, it's
Moon for that
Firefly.
matter.
For
Like,
me, it's Firefly. Firefly had a few seasons, and that's it.
Yeah.
but like is like think about like the access, right? Like if you didn't see it, it didn't happen. It wasn't real. Like you missed out. You didn't watch it on Wednesday, then you ain't never gonna know ever in your life. You forever missed out. But now, like, at least Netflix will warn you, hey, this will be gone soon. You better get it in while you can, because we about to move on. And it's like, oh, I know what I got to do, right? I can at my own leisure within this time frame, I can watch this show. So, it's the evolution of time, right? We all got our own little idiosyncrasies that we hold on to. And me being a little geeky kid, Bossmaster was my jam. And well, I don't even think I've ever watched a full season of it, but that's the point. If I didn't get to it in time, I was out of luck.
But
But
B, I got a
more.
question. B, I got a question. How do you
Hmm.
feel like your just a little transition? How do you feel like the skills that you implement in your professional and the skills that you implement in your community work, how do they correlate? Like as a catalyst for people in the community, and then as a project manager at work.
Well, so to clarify, it's product manager. Actually, product managers hate to be called project managers. It's like
Oh,
it's like the ultimate offense. It's the ultimate offense
got
right
it,
there. But
got it.
so the thing is, product managers, you own a product, right? And you optimize that product to be useful to an end user. So if you start extrapolating that out, like, my product is this community that I think is underserved, and I'm
Right,
doing an analysis on what they need, and then trying to build products, whether that's, again, the content that I create on my blog, or on my social media, or the talks that I give, to try to, like, optimize for that area, right? Like, so for instance, a lot of the talks that I'm doing right now are about how to kind of challenge and, ask for a raise, for instance, because I realized in the community, I was like, well, So people are now comfortable to apply for these jobs, but they're not comfortable to ask for what they're worth, right? So then you have to optimize for that next step. And then once people are comfortable asking for what they're worth, then maybe the next step will be something like, how do we like make sure that they actually have like that they're getting the right skills or getting the right access to information to level up their skills so they can get to like senior management. So it's kind of like it's a constant process. So it's a product. So I just treat it like a product that has to continue to be optimized. And I do that by kind of listening to what people tell me.
Okay, that's
Nice,
what's up. That's what's up. That's like
nice.
that's a nice way to show the transferable skills. For those that don't know, transferable skills are skills that you develop in one area that can transfer to another.
Mhm.
And I think it's important because we don't have, at least in my time, like I work in workforce development, right? And so it's important for me because I've also worked within like kind of the probation system, the juvenile justice system. And so the correlation is, if right now there, in the Bay Area, there's rampant, theft, right? And
Mhm.
so, people will post these videos of young people running in Walgreens trying to snatch everything and run out. And then the post will be like, this is why we can't have nothing. They making us look bad. And I'm like, hold on, understand the dynamics of what they're dealing with, right? They might not have access to basic needs or resources, and they might lack the exposure, experience, or education to understand what is the importance of money and how that relates to life, right? Because it's like, well, they all right, they got Air Maxes on and Jordans, and it's like, hold on, they don't come with the innate need of Jordans, right? Those are things you develop by your community. Those are things that you develop based off of your relationships, and then they become like signals or markers of your own self-worth, right? But we don't want to look at it like that. We just want to break it down to those are $200 shoes. You just ran and stole this Q-tips. What is you doing? But in reality, it's like, well, I gotta eat, and I got to be able to feel good about myself as I continue to live on in this world. And if these shoes make me feel good about myself and help me look just a little bit better while they catch me on this camera doing what I need to do to survive, so be it, right? And it's not to say that I'm condoning it. It's not to say that I'm allowing it. I'm not endorsing behavior. I understand it and I'm accepting of the reality because I've been able to be in the rooms with the families where it's multi-generational. These are things that are instituted, institutionalized into the family, right? These, oh, well, if I don't commit a violent offense, then I get a slap on the wrist and I get to go about my life, right? Or, yeah, I'm going to owe some money, but I grew up in a household where debt was something we moved away from and we shied away from having a conversation about. So when I say transferable skills,
Mhm.
yes, in the sarcastic, most literate and most technical terms, but it's important that we speak upon these things and make them the norm because these are attributes that speak to the duality and our abilities to show up in a workplace in a way that not everyone has access to because they don't grow up with the understanding and the fundamentals of like, my grandfather made a shack for my grandmother, right? We didn't really have multi-generational wealth to go and have someone create it for us. We had to figure out how to do it ourselves. And so now me showing up all these years later, okay, let me take these skills that I've developed in product management and now see how to serve my people in a different capacity. But for me, what was the call to action? Like, when was that moment when you realized, like, you know what, I need to show up for my people? Because I mean, to say you enjoy your job, right? You could easily just turn the screen off, throw the computer out the window, and be like, I ain't got to deal with this. I'm good. But what made it so that it's like, you know what, it's not enough? Like, what was that moment for you?
So I'm going to address that question, but I also want to go back to this idea of like, oh, like it's not okay. Like, you're going in and taking stuff and you're wearing these shoes. First of all, those shoes could have been 29.97 at Marshalls, first of all, but they are Nike Air Maxes. I don't care. Like a sale is a sale. So like I've never understood this idea of like you wear nice clothes. Like in fact, I mean my family was dirt poor and I wore really nice clothes because we caught them on sale, right? So like I don't really understand that logic behind it. And also like this idea of like, there's like this idea of the scam, right? And black folks, I mean, we were like, we wrote that check on Wednesday and we were hoping you weren't gonna cash it on until Friday because that's when the paycheck hit, right? So I just think that there's also this idea of like, it's all about survival, right? And so the things that people do to survive, like, and I also think that your mind, so when you're in survival mode, the way that your mind operates is completely different than when you are no longer in survival mode. And so I give so much grace to people who are in that space, because the ways that they would act is very vastly different than the way that I would act now. But I also was in that place before. So I wanted to acknowledge that. Um, in terms of why I feel such a need for this, is that I was literally dirt poor. Like, my family. I remember a story of one, the woman who went to jail. Like, they put her in jail for years, and she couldn't vote because she put her kid into a school in a different district, and she used a fake address for it. Like, that's literally my entire childhood. Like, my mom would have friends who would use various addresses so I could go to those different schools. And my teachers knew. And so my teachers would say, like, B, we know that your phone isn't working, because my phone, like, our phone was always off, and they didn't know where we lived. And they would be like, I can give you this note, because I know I can trust you to take it to your mom to make sure that she knows that you did something. Like, I didn't really do much wrong. I was really good at teachers. I'm not gonna lie about that. But the couple times I did do some wrong things, they're like, we can give you this note because we know you're going to give that to your mother, right? And so I think that was my mindset. And I remember my mom talking to me all the time, and she was just like, B, like, you're going to have a better opportunity. She's like, you don't have to be anything fancy. You could be a plumber, you could do like whatever. Like, I don't really care what you do, but you need to understand that there's a lot more opportunities out there for you. And she would be like, well, you need to go to the library and like check out this book about scholarships, for instance, when I was applying to college. And it was because my mom didn't always know the answers, but she always knew that there had to be a solution. And so her mindset was vastly different than most people in her community. And she imbued that in me. And so when I got old enough and I started looking at other people, I was just like, wait, you don't think like I think. And I realized, I was like, this is a unique trait. And if I could figure out how to like imbue that in other people, then this is an ability for us to create an army of amazing people, right? Because the number one thing is that it's not about any flashiness or like wanting to be famous or anything like that. It's about wanting to have a society of people who are successful, because if you have a society of people who are successful, and successful to me, again, coming from my background, is your bills are paid. You could take a nice vacation. You could get the not on sale Nikes, right? Like that to me is what success really looks like, right? And so it's like, if we can create more folks like that, then we're going to have less people who are causing harm in other places. And so it's really a harm reduction mechanism. Like, when I think about the world and I think about the bad things that happen in the world, I'm just like, man, if that person wasn't so stressed out because they didn't have a job where they weren't getting paid, or they were in a space where people were being disrespectful to them and being harmful to them, so then they go out into the world and they create more harm, then maybe, like, if we could reduce that, then maybe the world could be what I think it could be, which is just like this really great place with people who create positive, amazing things. And so that's really what it is. And so it's that desire to just have more positivity in the world, because it's too hard to think that there's no hope. So like, if I can figure out how to help create more hope, I think that's what really makes me do this work all the time.
We out here in these streets. Y'all don't understand. We really out here. So one, going back to what you said prior, because when you said harm reduction, that was it. You let's throw it all out the window. But just to kind of to go back to how this community of like-minded folks works, right? Like Nipsey in an interview has said, when you're in survival mode, you're not worried about the rules, the law, or what you think about me. And what you just said was, you're trying to take people from survival into thriving, right? Because when you're
Mm-hmm.
thriving, you get to have morals again. You get to have ethics. You get to have boundaries. You get to have capacities for yourself. And that to me is the important part of like these conversations is how do we create understanding when there's moments of division? How do we create compassion when there's moments of like aggression or harm, right? And harm, you said harm reduction. So let me break down for those that might be unfamiliar. If I see somebody smoking some weed and I run up on them, I'm like, you shouldn't be smoking no weed. Smoking is bad for you, right? That's they're more likely to meet that with, you're my adversary, you're against me. This is a divisive moment. Now, if I come to them and I see that they smoking a blunt, right? For those that don't know, that's when you have a tobacco wrapped leaf around some marijuana, right? Now, if I have the conversation with them and I say, "Oh, you smoking blunts? Have you ever smoked papers?" That is now the harm reduction. Like that is harm reduction because we're taking it from you smoking a blunt, which is okay. I see you smoking weed. Let's have a conversation about other ways to use this to consume this, right? Because then I can break it down from okay, you smoking a blunt to maybe you could smoke papers to maybe you could smoke a pipe to maybe you could eat it, right? Because a lot of times people are smoking weed for the benefit of what it does because it does have benefits, right? Whether that's to relieve stress, whether that's to deal with anxiety, whether that's to deal with appetite. Everyone has their reasons, right? Whether it's recreational or medicinal, we all have our reasons. So the thing is in harm reduction, it's, oh, you're smoking, it's causing harm because the tobacco leaf, right? Yes, I get it. That great choking, burning sensation of that first initial hit, it cannot be matched. But what is it doing now? Because you're associating the weed with the tobacco, you're almost changing your mind to the dependency beyond just weed, right? The dependency is now I need it on a routine fix because also I'm taking in nicotine with it. Now the conversation changed. When I talk to kids about this, they be like, yo, I never thought about it like that. No one's ever talked to me about it like that. You know what? I'm gonna try it and see what happens. And I'm
Yeah.
not looking for them to like change. I'm looking for them to at least explore the thought to see like, well, how do you engage with your own personal health? And then trying something different because eventually maybe you get to the point where it's like, oh, I don't even need it. Or maybe I get to the point where I'm not putting smoke inhalation into my lungs. I'm consuming this in a more sustainable manner, right? So harm reduction is the idea of let's reduce the harm and that doesn't just apply to like substance use, that applies to the community, that applies to how we treat each other, that applies to our conversations and our communication. But affluent, what was you getting ready to say?
Oh well, before we let B go, because she got things to do at home, and we want to make
One
sure that
one
we.
quick thing. One quick thing. My pronouns are they, them, their, not
So
she, her,
so
her.
they you're right. Thank you. And I've been good all this week about it. In every reference when talking about you, I'm like on point, and then I mess it up live. Excuse me for that. But before we let B go, they have some home things to take care of, and we want to make sure that they do that. But B, I want to hear. Um, Senior talked about something that you mentioned that you do in terms of listening to people. Uh, and creating that conversation instead of like stereotyping, instead of cross passing judgment, creating that conversation where you create the opportunity to listen to somebody and say, have you thought about this or have you tried this? And how important is that in today's society for us to promote listening and allowing dialogue to happen, and allowing people to, like you put it, I think in your on your blog for at the end of last month, just like unlocking somebody's true self. Um, how important is that right now?
Yeah, I think it's super important. So the thing that we have to remember is that every time we interact with someone, we bring in our own biases, right? And that is a huge issue. Like to be truthful, like so obviously I am a super proper like, Yankee now. Like even like so I'm still Southern, but like in some ways I'm a Yankee, right? And so like I am materially different than many people I interact with on a regular basis. And so if I put my own biases on them, in fact, I was listening to a call with someone who actually I deeply respected before this call, but after the call, I was like, whoa, I don't know if I
Dang.
respect this woman anymore. And it was because like it was very obvious that they were following a script in the advice they were giving people versus listening to what people were like saying. So for instance, a person like it was a Q&A section and the person asked a question and in the question they indicated why they couldn't pursue a certain path, but that person had already like decided how they were going to answer, and so the answer made no sense whatsoever, right? And so I know that when I thought about that person, how they left that call, I was like, they have to be so discouraged because this person who they highly respected didn't listen to them. And because you have your own biases, you have to take a step back. Like, so for instance, I'm a very loud extrovert, so like when it comes to like, for instance, like someone might say, like, I don't know how to ask for a raise. I've never had that problem because like I know how much I'm worth and I'm real loud about it and I will leave the company. Like I will legitimately just be like, just so you know, I already got applications out. So you can give me a raise or you cannot, but we good, right? But most people aren't like that. And so you have to really take a step back and think, if I were this person, if I wanted to be successful in this person's situation, what type of advice do I need to give them? So for instance, like with the asking for a raise, for a lot of introverts, it's so much easier for them to do research and create like a table of the various salaries, right? Because then it's a data driven thing. So it's not even them, they don't even necessarily even have to say it. They can just say, hey, by the way, I looked up all this information about my role and like my years of experience, and I noticed that this is how much that these people get paid. I was wondering if we could work to that, right? And so that's a way an introvert can actually go about that and be successful in that conversation. And then they feel very empowered, and then it allows them to kind of open up in other ways. So it really is about being the type of individual who takes that step back, who thinks about individuals, and then make sure that your advice is tailored to them. Because if it's not, they're never going to be unlocked, right? And so then it's like, what was the point of it? Like, what was the point of even participating in this way, right? Because it just is a waste of both of your times because you haven't taken the time to listen to them. And obviously, when we think about like the larger picture of things, right? Like we think about government and stuff like that. I always think it's very fascinating because like being a Southerner, obviously, I'm probably a little bit more conservative than some, like, my California counterparts, right? They're some, honestly, some of the stuff y'all do out here in California, I'd be like, y'all really do that in public? That's acceptable? Like, I did not even know that that was a thing that you did, right? So it's like really, really fascinating. But the thing is that by me coming here and just being completely open to what they're saying, it's completely unlocked my mind about so many things too. So the other reason that you want to listen is that sometimes it makes you take a step back and kind of improve upon who you are. And that's the other great value out of it, is because like one, if you ever get to the point where you've stopped growing, like what the heck is the point of living life, right? And so it's really, really great to have that two-way communication because you help the other person, but then you also often get help yourself.
Thank
B,
you for that.
thank you so much for your time. Where can people find you for our audio only people? What is the places you show up?
Yeah, so I am across the internet. So first of all, I'm the only B Pagels-Minor in the world. My wife insisted that we be a dual name, so we are the Pagels-Minors. And I'm on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn. I honestly, so if it's professional, I really prefer LinkedIn just because it always makes it easier for me to understand the context. But I also love completely shady, trashy stuff. So feel free to send that to me on Instagram and Twitter because it tickles me to death. And also, one of my favorite things is I love when people make me blush. It's getting harder because you Californians again have helped me grow, but I freaking love the stuff that y'all said because it will be hilarious.
B, thank you so much for your time. We're not going to take too much of it. I appreciate you taking this time out with us. Thank you for sharing so much and giving so much of yourself. But I am tempted, we got to get a part two, part three, because there is a wealth of information that people need that you have. But in the meantime, in between time, you know where to find B. B Pagels-Minor, right? That's B P as in,
Paul.
Paul. And then instead of it being like bagel, you take that B out, put a P. I know it's confusing, but then minor, y'all know that, like B minor. So B Pagels-Minor, right? BPAGEL, whatever, MINOR. But anyways, B, thank you very much for coming through. I'm sorry for butchering your name, but I
It's all
appreciate
right.
you. And all the praise and all the love and all the admiration, and continue the work. And just know all our resumes going to be popping up soon. So thank you.
Yes, I love it. Bye,
It
everyone.
is. Take
Peace.
care. Enjoy dinner. Peace.
For sure, for sure.